Welcome to House Money with Corbin Matisse. Here we have real conversations with Texas real estate experts. You'll hear true stories about the market from the heart of Texas real estate. Let's go.
Zia Lowe is broker leader at Remax Bastrop Area. In 2024, they sold $40 million worth of real estate, and they're at $12 million this year, so they're on pace to exceed $40 million in 2025. She's a third-generation real estate professional, just like me, and she's a mom to two beautiful kids, wife to her husband, Jason. Zia, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So you and I both had grandparents in the real estate business. I don't know if you knew that. My granddad was in it and great-granddad was in it, and I know your grandmother was too. You got your start in real estate when you were 18 years old, if my notes serve me. Tell me that story.
So when I graduated from high school, I wanted to go straight off to the University of Texas at Austin, and my mom was like, Zia, we really need you to go to junior college first, before you go straight off to Austin, for lots of reasons, finances being one of them. So I guess I decided to negotiate a deal even back then. I said, what if I go straight off to UT, but I call my grandmother and ask her if I can live with her for the first 2 years of college? That way there's no room and board in Austin.
Okay.
And I did. And I started working for her while I moved in with her, and then started working for her doing old school ads, like brochures where you had to put the actual picture on there, then laminate them. I did a newspaper ads for us and the Austin American-Statesman and the Bastrop Advertiser, and that was pretty much my first job, was designing ads and brochures.
So you were going to live with your deal was that you were going to live with your grandmother while you were going to school, and that was how you were going to get your early start at UT Austin, was by reducing your own housing costs by moving in with her. So did your grandma live in Bastrop or in Austin?
She lived in Bastrop, so I commuted to UT for the first 2 years.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I guess you could set up your schedule to where you didn't have to go every day.
I was on the extended graduation plan. I barely would take 12 hours a semester, mostly on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I might drive into school for one of those days. So, I wasn't the best UT student. Student in general. The only reason I graduated when I did was my little sister was about to graduate, and she's 2 years behind me. So I figured I should graduate before she did from UT.
Yeah, go ahead and wrap up before your younger sister. Good call. All right, so you are leader of Remax Bastrop Area. That seems like a very established office. Some of the biggest, the heaviest hitters in Bastrop County work with you there. At what point did you get the torch for that office? When did you become leader? Tell us about that.
I mean, it was a slow progression from. I started out with ads part-time, helping answering the phones. And then when I graduated from UT, I became the office manager, like the front desk person, for 2 years. Then for about 10 years, I was a regular agent like everybody else, meaning I worked the schedule, I paid the same fees, I did all the same things as any new agent and any agent would do. And I did that for quite a while. Then I got my broker's license and I started helping manage things more at the office. And then it was just kind of slowly, but I really didn't become the designated broker owner until last January. So January 2024. And
so how's it been over there over the course of the past 15 months or so since you took over as official broker? Any changes in the market, changes in the team or the office? What are you seeing?
Well, I think before that I was doing a lot of that already. I would say for the last 2 or 3 years, my grandmother was coming to the office less and less. And when COVID hit, she was really kind of planning to get out, in 2020 or 2021. And then COVID hit, and then I got diagnosed with cancer. So I was out for a while with surgeries and everything. So she had to kind of go back into the office, and we had to kind of realign. But I would say for about the last 4 to 5 years, it's been, she's been doing some of the management, but it's been just moving over to me. So it wasn't like a big, oh my gosh, I don't even know if the community even realized that I'd taken on that role. They, it was just kind of naturally going that way. But, we always have changes in agents. Every real estate company does, and they're all independent. So I don't have a team per se, but I'm just I'm just their designated broker, and I'm there to support them and help them be successful. But I will say we have really great retention. So I don't have a lot of turnover like a lot of brokerages do. I lose 1 or 2 maybe a year, gain 1 or 2, but we've stayed pretty consistent since probably 2007 really on our agent account.
Okay. All right. Well, I get it. It wasn't like a hard conversion from you agent into broker and now team leader in January 2024. That was just like a slow migration for you over to that role. And so it felt a little more natural. Obviously, you caught my attention with one of the things you said. Does anybody know that you were diagnosed with cancer? I'm finding out about that right now on this visit.
I'm sorry, I thought
No,
you
I
knew,
had
but
no
I don't know
idea.
why I would have.
No.
No, it was a huge shock to the family because I have my grandmother and her sisters Zia, so I'm Zia K after my great aunt and my grandmother, and then I had all my grandparents. My mom has 4 sisters, and no one in our family has had breast cancer. So my sister came in. She just kept pushing me to get a mammogram. I was a couple of years overdue, and my nurse practitioner walked in while we were getting our toes done and she said, schedule my sister a mammogram. And I went in, and they kept thinking, this isn't going to be anything. You don't have the history. You're too young. And I did. I had breast cancer, and it was surprise after surprise. I had the gene, and nobody expected it. I think my story isn't harder than anybody else's. I think it's just that it was such a shock to everyone just because of there were no signs, no history. And then I ended up having the gene, which was even a bigger shock. So I was real lucky I didn't have to do chemotherapy and I didn't have to do radiation. But I went from never having a surgery to I had 5 surgeries in 6 months.
Man, Zia, that is so crazy. I'm so glad that you're bouncing back. You seem so healthy and happy right now. That I just had no idea. Well, thank you for sharing that stuff with us. How are you feeling?
I'm good. I would just say when you think it can happen to you, I'm living proof that, stranger things have happened. So, like I said, a lot of things were fortunate about that time. I didn't have to go through a lot of treatments, just a lot of surgeries.
Man, well, you look great. It seems like you're feeling great. Gosh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we'll take a turn here.
Okay.
Where do you see, I know you've been here for a long time. Where do you see Bastrop County in 10 years or so?
I've watched it I can remember the first economic thing I sat in on about the growth of Bastrop County and about how we were one of the fastest growing counties and about the triangle of Texas, the Dallas, Houston, San Antonio triangle where all that growth was coming. And it came, and it's still coming, but it didn't come as rapidly as I think people expected. And there seems to be things that naturally happen in our world that kind of slow down some of that growth. I mean, I'm not saying it's not coming, but if you want to be really realistic about it, we had all that growth projected, and then 9/11 happened. And so that I remember we had a subdivision that my grandmother was in charge of, and that kind of cooled that subdivision. Like, things kind of stopped back then. And historically, that's when the low interest rates kind of came into play, was all the way back then. That's when they kind of started coming in low and then kind of creeping up, and then but that's when you started seeing those lower rates. And then of course then you had the boom in 2007, when it took a pulse to get a loan. That was pretty much all you needed. And then, as you know, that crashed in 2008. So that kind of slowed down that boom. Then 2015, we started ramping up again with growth. And then we had the slowdown, but then the weird frenzy with COVID. And now we're here and we're still growing. I think we're getting more of those businesses we've been wanting in Bastrop County for a long time. You know, a lot of people want it to stay small. A lot of people love the downtown charm. I'm one of them. I live in downtown. But you know that we've wanted new restaurants. We've wanted other options, and those things we're finally starting to see that happen with the Colony and some of these other subdivisions coming into play that have been in the works for a long time. I think we're just going to kind of continue on this path forward. I don't know if we'll have another huge boom that's going to bring that kind of market. I mean, I really don't know, but I think that it's going to continue to grow. I just hope we don't get completely swallowed by Austin, that we still maintain some of our identity as Bastrop and Bastrop County.
When you first started to answer that, you said that you felt like the growth didn't happen as rapidly as everybody thought it would. And I feel like I've seen that in certain neighborhoods like Cola Vista as an example. It seems like a huge investment was made into that neighborhood maybe 20 years ago or something, or maybe 15 years ago or something like that. And because it looks like there's like these beautiful homes, you can tell they spent a ton of money all around the same time. Like the houses look like they were built in the same, 5-year or 10-year period. But there's been no reinvestment into those neighborhoods recently. So it looks like, to me, that neighborhood looked illustrated what you said, that everyone thought that there was going to be growth and everyone thought it was going to be faster. Because it looks like in that neighborhood specifically, it looks like they put so much money into Cola Vista and then they just missed the wave. Like they were expecting a huge wave and it just maybe never came. It's just kind of the feel that I get from that neighborhood. And it sounds like you might have some examples of others too. I
mean, I think, and I forgot, I left out another big thing that impacted Bastrop County's housing, which was, of course, the 2011 fire, where we lost 1,600 homes. So that, I remember at that point, we were coming off that 2009, kind of bust, and there were so many homes listed in the Colony, for example. And then after that fire happened, every one of them were under contract. Because people out in Pine Forest, a couple of people, not very many in Cola Vista, people in Tahitian Village, people in Circle D, they'd all lost their homes. And so our inventory kind of had this ramp up of everything going off the market. And back then I thought, okay, this is going to slow Bastrop down, right? We've lost so many trees. We've lost part of the park. We've lost a lot of that natural beauty. And I thought, okay, we're going to have this wave of people that are going to stay, right? And they're going to buy something now. But what is it going to look like in 2 to 3 years? Are we going to see a slowdown with people coming here? And that didn't happen. So I would say that when I said, it was those projections in 2000 that were just scary. Like by the year 2030, Bastrop was going to be unrecognizable. I remember economic, those kind of things. And what I learned in college and what I've learned just in real estate through the highs and lows, things happen to you can't keep up with that kind of growth. You can't keep up with the prices going that high. You can't keep up with just building with no infrastructure. There's things that happen that kind of naturally slow you down. And so that might sound weird from different perspectives, whether it's economy, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's a pandemic. But there does seem to be things that keeps real estate and other things kind of in check so that things don't just explode.
Were people asking you about the fires for like years after it, or do people still ask you about it? Like, hey, what was that area impacted by the fire? Or Because, you know, like, do people still ask about that? When I first moved here, everybody was asking me. They're like, "Hey, what about the fire?" You know, I'm like, that was 10 years ago.
Well, they don't
But
ask about it as much anymore. But
right,
for a while, it was, what do you do if there is a fire here? And for so many years prior to that, we didn't have anything like that. You know, my grandmother lived in Tahitian Village for 30 years, and she moved there like 1987, 88, and that we didn't have that fire till 2011, or was it? Yeah, it was 2011, right? Um, but then we had a bunch of little pocket fires after that, and you know, it's still real scary to the people that lived through it. And but I do wonder. I've heard that some of the insurance now has classified parts of Bastrop County as a fire zone, so that has impacted homeowners insurance, which I think we're seeing across the board with some of the southern states, whether it's hurricanes or whether it's fire and natural disasters. I think there are some people that have talked to me as clients recently that said, I need to see what my insurance would be like and if that's in the fire zone.
that's interesting. I've got some good friends in the insurance business, and they say that it's the toughest that it's been in 20 years. And the main idea is that uh, the carriers are just not wanting to take any risks on anything, and that they were being so risky in the COVID period, essentially paying people to have their policies. They took such big losses during that period. They're kind of just trying to claw some of it back uh, from that time. And I think we've seen a lot of that in other industries too. But yeah, I mean, I still have a rental property in Tahitian Village. I tried to do a very controlled little fire of some like lumber in my backyard, and I like had a real fire pit and was watching it very closely. But I had neighbors coming over to the house like, "Hey, you got to be really careful about the fire." And this was like right when I moved into that neighborhood. So I definitely think there's a lot of people on watch for that still here. So okay, so what do younger agents need to know before attempting a real estate career in Bastrop County? Or maybe we just say anywhere in Central Texas from your
Anywhere.
perspective.
I think that they need to know that it's expensive. I think they're prepared when they come out of school. You're told you may not make a sale for a while, right? I think they've been saying that since I graduated. I mean, graduated, whatever I did from. I just took my test and became a real estate agent in 2003. That was the thing, you know, you may not make a sale for 6 months. You may not do that. I think that they don't realize how much of your time and your own money it's going to take to get started. So it's not just about not making money. It's about you've got to have something there to start your career. I think that a good broker is important, but I think you also need a broker that's going to be really real with you. In other words, you know, when I get a new agent, I don't promise them a bunch of things. I don't promise them a bunch of leads. I don't promise them a bunch of one-on-one training. You know, I point them into the right directions, but I tell them the deal with this business is the sky's the limit, and I'm here to support you, and I can give you all the tools. But if you don't start doing it for yourself and you don't take the initiative, it doesn't matter how many things I feed you, you're never going to learn to do it on your own. And you have to be able to do it on your own to make it in this business. You're the only one that's going to motivate you. You're the independent contractor. I can teach you how to do, I can give you ideas, I can teach you how to do things, but that internal motivation is going to have to come from you. And I've got agents that have started with me that have done really well, and I have had agents that didn't do so well. And part of that, I'm not saying it's all their fault, but I'm just saying I think that it's really hard because with real estate, the sky's the limit. So either you can go so hard and burn yourself out so quick, or you just have to understand that it's a long game, just like real estate. It's kind of a long-term investment. If you really want to do it for a living, you can get in a hot market. you're going to get right back out in a bad one, or you can weather the storm and stay with it and invest in it and invest in your career. But it's up to you. It's not up to me.
I think that's really good, honest advice. You touched on something that nobody has yet on this podcast, which is preparing people to not crush it right away, not make a ton of money right away, but also the amount of investment that it takes to get started, to cause some momentum. Nobody talks about the investment, and you're right. I think it's the investment that should be talked about more. So when you talk about time and money that it takes to be successful, what does it really take? Like, talk to me about those two investments of time and money to get momentum in a real estate business.
So you've got your brokerage, right? Whatever your broker is going to charge. Okay, there's that. And some of that might be up front and some of that might be part of your split. But let's look outside that. You're going to have to join the MLS. That's going to be on you. You're going to have to join a board to be in the MLS. If you're just joining one MLS, one board, you have that. Then you're going to need a super key. That's another fee. Then you're going to think about your own business cards. You're going to need to order your business card. You need to order your signs, or if you have office signs, that's great, but chances are your name's not on them. So if you want your own, signs with your name, you've got those. And those only come when you get a listing, so you can probably wait on those things. But I think really people are really shocked at just how much the MLS and the boards and all of that is immediately coming out of school. And then you have to pay TREC and all of those fees up front. But then as you get into it, to really be competitive, and say you start getting listings or you start getting buyers, you need materials, you need to take continuing education. You're not going to come out of real estate school knowing a bunch. So a lot of times I tell my newer agents, I was like, go ahead and do your GRI. It's a great thing to start and get you more information, but that's a few $100s. Then if you're going to join a chamber, you're going to join any of these groups to network, then that's a money here and there. Then there's the lunches. If you're going to go to which lunches are you going to go to network? And it's kind of understanding that this is all money you're putting out there to promote yourself in hopes to get money back. It's kind of like a listing. I remember being in real estate when newspaper and how expensive newspaper ads were, right? So we'd spend all this money on the newspaper. And when it went to internet, I thought, oh my gosh, no one's doing newspaper anymore. We're going to save so much money because we're not having to pay to do newspaper ads. Internet's kind of free, right? Well, no, that's not what happened at all. It's just that we have to belong to more things now. Our pictures need to be better now. Our marketing needs to be better now. So, it kind of changed with the times as well. And I think there is a shock to that, and I think it's a shock to most people, that when I put a sign in the yard, let's take out the MLSs I belong to. Let's take out all the other things I belong to. Let's just take the photos and the signs, all of that. I mean, you're generally out just on that home anywhere between $500 and $1,000 just to list it. And I'm not counting MLS. I'm not counting broker fees. I'm not counting any of that. I'm counting sign, lot box, pictures, postcards if you're doing that, whatever you're doing to promote that listing when it first comes out.
What are your thoughts on the investment of non-monetary components like time, effort, heart and soul? Talk to me about the investment of those things.
I mean, I'm probably the worst person to talk to about that.
I don't think you are.
I was up at 4 a.m. this morning with my mind racing because real estate it's like a gamble. It's like, it's addictive, right? So if you're working really hard, you know that that's going to pay off, right? There's no magic pill. I don't care who tells you what script you read. I mean, I've seen them all. I've been sold on them, not sold on them. It's hard work, and it's client relationships, and it's trying to keep up with those client relationships and building your business, and it takes time. There are people that don't take it as seriously as I do, just like that is in any profession. So I would say I'm the extreme. I always tell my clients, if your home's not selling, you're not the only one worried about it at night. I'm worrying for you. What I think is really important, and I was kind of going to go a tangent on this in some way or fashion without sounding like I'm just trying to protect myself or make myself sound or my profession sound better or harder than it is. I really don't think when people call you and they say, Zia, I really want to go see this home. And they sign an agreement with you, whether that's for a week, you have to sign the agreements, whether you do it for a short term than a long term. And then they call you a couple weeks later and they want to go see another home. And you might be working with these people on and off, right? For 2, 3, 6 months. And their thought is, I'm only calling her every once in a while, right? To go see a home. Our buyer's agent thing is over. This other agent called me. I'm going to go see a home with them. Zia's only, she showed me a few pretty homes. I'm going to go work with this agent. I don't think they realize that every time you pull me away to go show you something, if you don't intend to be my client, you're either pulling me away from my family or you're pulling me away from someone who does want to be my client. You're taking my time. And I think that is something that people just don't understand. And as I've gotten older,
it's the worst part.
As I've gotten older, my time is more valuable.
100%. For me, it's that it would look like the time. And like when I talk about it, it's like, just please don't waste my time. Like it's kind of how I would say it to a friend. But really it's more of like the heart and soul and the effort that you put into them that is lost. It's like when you talk about it being a gamble or, from one perspective, it could be an investment. It's like, well, I made 100% of investment. I gave you everything I had, all my experience, anything I know about this business, all of my energy I put into it. I'm never like giving you 30%. So you're getting 100% all the time. But if we don't end up working together and you do end up working with someone else, it's so painful because of the heart and soul investment. Like I would rather waste money than waste energy or something like that. So that's why I wanted you to talk about that, because I think that's the hardest part, is putting so much into people and sometimes getting a return and sometimes not.
And I also think that there's kind of this new thing with the thinking that buyer's agents don't work as hard as listing agents. And I think it's like anything else, right? Sometimes you have a listing that you didn't have to work as hard at to sell. Sometimes you didn't have a buyer you had to work with as long. But I do think if you're an agent that is doing their job and doing it how it should be done and putting everything into it, a buyer's agent is working just as hard as a listing agent.
I thought that works twice as hard most of the time.
I think it depends on the market. Let's say when it was so easy to sell a home, right? Let's talk 2021, where if I had a home listed, I'm going to get 16 to 25 offers on this home.
Yeah, and all agents were saying, I just need some more sellers.
Right. And so those buyers agents at that time were having to work really hard. They're writing multiple offers. They're trying to get a jump. They're trying to explain to their clients why they lost out again. The flip side of that sounds like a really easy sell on my side. But you have better been ready for 3 days of just constant 24 hours a day, people calling you, wanting information. Then you need to present all those offers, and you do present them in such a way that they make sense to your client. So why it seemed like an easy thing to sell, in some ways it was. You weren't sitting there, spending a lot of money on marketing those homes at that time, right? Like you're having to spend right now. And it was a harder thing for buyer's agents then. It was still tough for a listing agent. You had a lot riding on them picking the right offer to go with. And you had buyers out there writing multiple offers on multiple properties and using their option fee as kind of, which one do I get? And then you lose your seller's kind of momentum if it goes off and then it comes back on. And I mean, that was just a crash course in all kinds of things for listing agents too. And so I think every market has its ups and downs. Real estate corrects itself. And so right now I would think buyers agents are probably working pretty hard. They've got lots of houses to show. And buyers that are really kind of sitting on the fence. And on the flip side of that, you've got plenty of listing agents working really hard to promote a lot of listings that are out there in Bastrop County right now. A lot of homes, lots of inventory, lots of new builds. And so I would say right now we're probably pretty even.
I saw something. I don't know if you know any of the numbers around inventory. I saw something like, I don't know if it was 13 or 30% increase in inventory year over year, but I know that y'all watch that kind of thing. What are you seeing in terms of inventory change?
So last week I did my Monday market update, is which when I pull all the Bastrop County listings, like single family residences. And that's not counting manufactured homes. It's not counting townhomes, which we don't have a lot of townhomes, but we do have quite a few manufactured homes. But I just kind of have to put some sort of parameter on it. And we were right at 700. So I've been doing that since July of last year. And we've been in the 600s pretty much. So we've increased some since last year. It's been a steady increase, but I think during the height of like in 2019, which was not the height of the market, but I think that was our last normal market, was like half that. And then, so our days on market have increased quite a bit. That's sticking around 100.
Okay, so I have a young friend in Austin, and she was on the podcast recently, and she's considering the broker path in her future. What advice or what young agents need to know before they start down the broker path? I know there's education that they have to do. There's a change in role. There's, things change. What do younger agents need to know before they consider that as an option for their career growth?
They can always be a broker. It depends on what kind of broker they want to be. So it has, and I'm going to see if I answer your question, but just for a background in our office, we've always had additional brokers in the office. Frank has been a broker, I don't even know how many years, well over 20 years, and he's never chose to go open his own brokerage. He runs it.
And what's, just for the people listening, what's his last name?
Ronashek.
Yeah, okay. And when I talk about heavy hitters in Bastrop County, and I'm like, your team has a high concentration of them, like he's one of the guys I'm thinking of. So.
Right. So he has his broker license and always had. His sister-in-law, Sheila, his last name, not wife, sister-in-law, Sheila Ronashek has had her broker's license for a long time with us. There's a couple of others, and we've always had a few brokers. And it depends on what you want to do with your broker license. Do you want to be a hands-on broker? Do you want to be a mom and pop? Is your brokerage just going to kind of be a team? Meaning it's going to be Zia Lowe real estate and everybody's on my team? Are you going to franchise with a larger brokerage name? But, it depends on what your goals are. Mine has never been to be a 100 agent person broker. I'd like a few more agents than I have right now, but I know that if I grow to, there's these hard spots in brokerages where you've got to either get so big that you don't have to sell real estate anymore, right? I have so many agents that's enough income for me not to sell real estate. Or you stay small and you're still selling real estate, but you're still mentoring and helping and working together as an office, and you want that. You want that, for lack of a better word, team. Even though we're not a team, you want agents with you. You want that interaction. And then there's the brokers that are all about the numbers, but charge a really low fee and take as many people as possible that come out of school and just build our numbers and kind of let them do their own thing and offer some services as brokers, but kind of not that one-on-one where they walk in the office and know who you are. And none of those are bad, good, it's whatever your choices are. So it really, I don't have a great answer for that. I will tell you, as a broker for a smaller company and a hands-on broker, I probably average, there's days when I have 1 or 2 calls from agents with contract questions or something to ask me, to days where I have half my office call me with a question. So, and I have experienced agents for the most part that know what they're doing. And I really do wonder, who do these agents call if they don't have kind of that bat line? I know there's different managers and things like that, but I laugh with people and I was like, if you're trying to get a call, you probably have experienced this, sorry. But really it's hard to get me on the phone unless you're my family member or one of my agents or a client. They kind of get the bat line. I answer them within, 30 minutes if I can, if they've got a question, those kind of things. It's a headache to be a broker. It's a headache. And it's kind of a love of wanting to be there and to help other agents be successful. And it's about being a leader and wanting that. I mean, being vain enough to want to be the leader of the company and things like that. But you really need to be there for your agents. And so I don't really have any advice other than you need to know which direction you're going in. And you need to understand that now you're in charge of those agents and those people. And if they make a mistake, it's on you, and they need your guidance, and you're there to help them. I tell everybody in my office, I'm not here to give you business. I'm here to give you every tool I can to help you be successful so that you can have as much business that you can create. I'm here to make your job easier. That's my job as your broker. Give you the tools to make it easier and to help you and support you.
Heard all kinds of opinions on Elon. What are your thoughts on Tesla, SpaceX, and Bastrop?
I mean, I don't have huge opinions other than this. I think that sometimes the sellers in Bastrop County see the name Elon and think that means we're selling high executives from all of Elon's company, $700, $800 plus $1,000 homes. They see that growth and they're thinking that it's a lot of big money coming in, and that's not the case. There is money, there are executives coming here, there are those things, but Elon doesn't pay everybody. Just because he's a billionaire doesn't mean he pays everybody $1 million to go do a job at SpaceX or Tesla or anything like that. As far as big opinions on the traffic, concerns about other things, I don't have huge opinions on it just because I don't feel like I know enough to give an opinion. I have been to SpaceX. That was neat. I got to tour it because they actually reached out to me to ask me to do a talk on breast cancer awareness. So I went to SpaceX and got to meet people. People were great. It was really a cool facility, but it's a factory. That's what SpaceX is out there. It's a factory. That's where they made the Starlinks. So a big portion of that building is factory. And then you've got a lot of younger people working there in the technology part, and I'm sure you've got some, but it's not, everybody's not, that at SpaceX isn't coming to look to buy homes in Bastrop. I think that's kind of I think people are expecting more than what's happening. And a lot of those that I talked to actually lived in Austin, rented, they were younger, they rented in downtown, that kind of thing. Was that kind of what you were looking for?
No, that's perfect.
I mean,
what about the schools? That was one of the first things that I heard about when I first moved to Bastrop County. How are the schools in Bastrop?
So I think this is a loaded question. And I do have strong opinions on the school. And you would happen to ask that question as there's just all these news stories that just came out on social media today that BISD got an unfavorable rating for academic achievement. And I haven't been able to read on that yet. It is important to know that I am extremely biased when it comes to public school education. I grew up in a rural town, and we did not have the best school system and school district where I grew up. So did my husband. He graduated from the same high school as I did, and he was the first person, I think, in his immediate family to go to college. And not only did he go to college, but he became a doctor of PharmD, and I think when you're talking about private schools and opportunities and things like that, I always think about him, because if that had been the case, would he had still been the first one to make it to college? If that was, you had to kind of go that route. And so I feel like Bastrop, what people don't understand about Bastrop County is it's a Title I school. Bastrop ISD is Title I, which means there's a big portion of Bastrop County that is lower socioeconomic. We're a bid county, we're a bid district. And when you take that into account and you try to compare us to where a median price is, $500,000 plus in some of these more concentrated smaller school districts to rural school districts where you truly have all kinds of kids and all kinds of kids learning and different things and we're also, I think, about 65% to 70% Hispanic, and we have a lot of English as a second language. I don't think that these ratings are always a true indication of what's going on in the schools. I think when you have standardized testing and you have some language barriers and you have some socioeconomic and where your kids are maybe, you have kids that don't have internet at home. You know what I mean? It's just a different kind of thing. And I have spent time in the schools and I've seen the dedication of many of the teachers, and my kids go to public school in Bastrop, and they have issues just like any other school. But I also think that it's really a good experience for my kids to go to school with kids that are not just like them, where it's a different whole world learning experience. That being said, when I say I'm biased, my grandmother was on the school board. She's a big believer in public education. My sister is a music teacher at one of the elementary schools. She came from a 10-year career in politics where she was the district director for a United States congressman and then decided to teach school, which was a shock to everybody. My degree is in teaching and I couldn't hack it as a student teacher. So I understand. So when I speak, and then a lot of my family, 3 of my 4 grandparents actually are retired teachers, including my grandmother that started the real estate company, who was also, I think I already said, she was president of the school board of Bastrop. So it's not a great answer, but I'm not going to say the schools suck. I'm not going to say they're great. I'm going to say they're public schools with a huge population and different kids, and that we have dedicated people there doing their best.
If you could go back to the COVID era, knowing what you know now, what would you do as it pertains to the real estate market? Like if you knew what was coming, what would you have done in 2020, 2021?
I mean, I don't know that we could have done anything different. And Texas was one of the few states. I mean, I had no idea when it first kicked off. I had no idea how things were going to sell. I didn't know that it was going to end up being this frenzy of homes. That's not what I ever thought it would be. And I don't know if I could go back and say, hey, everybody, buy prior to this, or everybody get ready to sell because this is going to be that. I don't know that I could say that. I thought it was going to hurt us. I didn't think it was going to send it into this insane frenzy of home buying. I feel for the people right now that bought during that time, some of them, because they are upside down in their homes, which the reason we're not seeing as many foreclosures like we did, because you have to remember back then you had to have so much cash to beat out anybody. So if it didn't appraise, you had to have 25,000 more or 50,000 more. So a lot of people have skin in the game. They're not in their home for $0. But there's plenty of people that bought during that height that now if they call me and they want to sell, they're taking a loss. So I don't have a great question. I mean, I don't have a great answer for that. I don't know what I would have done differently. That was also a very crazy time in my life because that's when I was going through all my surgeries. So I really don't. Yeah. I mean, I was pretty much just hanging on by a thread in general.
Yeah. I totally got that.
But
Okay.
I mean, I would have said maybe not everybody get their real estate license. No,
What are a few things that you learned from your grandmother that have served you well in life and in your career?
You know, it's interesting because I will still meet people in town or know people in town, and um, gosh, was it last week or the week before? I threw a party for my grandmother at my home. She turned 90, and I probably had 60 to 70 people come to wish her a happy birthday from Bastrop and beyond. And several of those people would tell me that my grandmother was the first person they met when they came to town because they were looking for a house. And to think that you might be the introduction to someone's place where they're going to live, that you're going to be that first impression of their community, that's a pretty awesome privilege if you think about it that way. Think about if you were looking for a house and the very first person you went in to talk to in real estate. I know it's a little different now. You don't walk into an office like you used to. You could still walk into ours. But say you went in and you met a total person that was just a jerk. Would you want to live there? I mean, you're kind of that face of the community for somebody when they first come to town. And I think that's just an awesome thing. I've learned that not every client is for me. You know, when you get the luxury of being a little more selective, and maybe you should also do it in the beginning. If you're just not jiving with someone and they're not taking your advice, and you're not, and they don't give you that trust, and you can't build it with them, then it's probably better. They're better suited for another agent. I've learned never to not, when we're closed, I'm not gone. So after a closing, I try to do well about keeping in touch with people, but it's more than that. It's more like I sold a home to this couple 5 or 6 years ago, and they're thinking about redoing their closets. So they're calling me for where can they get their closets redone. They're worried about their tax appraisal, so they're calling me about that. I mean, I get those questions. If I can keep those lines of communication open, I get those questions for years, and I love being a resource for them. And I will tell you, in my first part of this year, I think one client I had a closing with, I think every client that I closed with the exception of one, I'd closed with multiple times. And they were all repeat business. Some of them 3
What do you?
times.
That's a crazy one. Um, yeah, that's crazy to hear. Um, what do you think are the biggest up and coming submarkets of Bastrop? Now, I understand Bastrop is a submarket of Austin, but Bastrop has grown. We have some big employers here. What do you think are the biggest up and coming submarkets of Bastrop?
So do you mean as in types of houses or the type of
No,
people that,
like I mean like the areas or the town.
like where future development's going to come?
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think are the biggest up and coming submarkets like other cities surrounding Bastrop?
Oh, I see. Well, there was one that I pointed out 3 or 4 years ago that nobody really paid attention to when I tried to tell them that Taylor would be a big deal. Do you know Taylor? And then Samson came, and the 130 was right there, and you can get from Taylor to Round Rock in like 15 minutes, whereas it was a rural farming community, and you could buy a home in downtown Taylor that was significantly less expensive than one in Bastrop. I thought that was a really up and coming, and it ended up being that. Lockhart's already moving a lot. I think that's another one that's growing pretty consistently. Elgin and Manor have a lot of activity and growth going on, and I do think that's partially because of 290. Well, I know it's because of 290, but I do feel like Manor's just kind of encroaching, like Austin's encroaching on Manor, and then Maynard's encroaching on Elgin, and I just feel like that's all just kind of becoming one. Whereas I still feel like there's a pretty good break between Cedar Creek and Bastrop. So, you've got Austin, Del Valle, Cedar Creek, and then Bastrop. Smithville has always been a great community. I think it will remain a great community. I don't know that Smithville will grow as quickly in the downtown area, and I have a theory on that. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah,
So
what's the Smithville theory?
I grew up in Wharton County, and in Wharton we had an entrance to our town, much like Smithville does, where you exit off the highway and you go into the town. So I grew up in Wharton and El Campo, and El Campo has continued to grow and get larger, and the highway goes right through El Campo, whereas Wharton, you take a very similar route to Wharton as you do to Smithville. So I think that does help buffer those smaller towns when you're not just driving straight through them, when they're a little bit offset from the highways.
Got it. So you think it'll preserve the way that it is now and keep it smaller?
I mean, I think to some extent, I'm not saying it won't grow. I mean, I'm sitting out in a beautiful model home that's part of the Smithville market.
Yeah.
But it's
Keller
off
Farms.
the highway, right? But it's off the highway.
Like Keller
So,
Farms.
Keller Farms. It's really awesome. You should come check
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah.
But it is off the highway, and I don't know that LaGrange will be the next one. Giddings, I'm trying to think of the ones around here that kind of have that traffic. Lockhart's closer to Austin. As you get to LaGrange, you're kind of halfway between Houston and Austin, so you're further out for people. That's the problem, right? You're too far to go into work for Austin. You're too far to go into work for Houston. But then so many people work from home. Let's be really honest. If you're listening to the news, Austin's not the hot spot right now. We've lost that hot spot. So we might just kind of see it even out.
Yeah. I know that it was so hot that when you do a year over year comparison, you're seeing things like 20, 30% decline in values, which puts people in the situation you described where if they have to sell, they're taking a loss in a lot of cases unless they put a ton of cash into the home, which is still a loss. So we'll see. I mean, I guess I would like to see Bastrop grow, and I'd like to see Smithville stay small. Because Smithville reminds me of the town. Yeah. So I have that house in Tahitian Village, and I grew up in a town called McKinney, which I think it was a little bit bigger than Bastrop when I was in high school. But it had a small, a historic downtown area, historic homes around that downtown area. And Smithville feels very much like that now. And so, anyway, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would like it to grow and others that want it to stay small. And I guess it just depends on when you plan to sell your house or when you plan to buy. So here's a question for you. Zia, how do you think that this is not how you should? How do you think most home buyers pick their realtor? So how do you think it's happening right now?
Okay.
So when a home buyer picks a realtor.
Okay, I want to say one thing about Smithville and Bastrop real quick. I feel your pain in some ways. And that's the whole marketing with me with Keller Farms is like you have the big town of Bastrop right here for still charming, right? Still charming downtown, got the park and the river and everything, but then you can also do the other direction and basically take a step back in time. Because I lived in Smithville for 5 months while we were redoing our house this past year, and it was a slower pace. It was very friendly, and I love them both for different reasons. I'm a Bastropian. I love Bastrop. Fun fact, my great grandmother is buried in Smithville. So my family has had ties to Smithville and Muldoon out here for generations and generations. So obviously we love it out here. But I think it will grow some because it's just too great of a community. But I'm kind of like you. I like having Bastrop one direction and Smithville the other and just being able to choose. How do people pick their realtor? Okay, so I think it depends on where you're coming from. So I think right now, if you're coming from another state, you're going to an Austin agent, right? Because you don't know about Bastrop, you don't know about Smithville. You're going to start in Austin. You're going to be like, I'm going to pick a state no one else picks, like New Mexico, right? I'm coming from New Mexico. I know I want to be in Austin area. They're going to Google and they're going to find somebody that way, unless they have a real trusted realtor at home that they're going to have a referral to like a particular area that they know they want to go. But I think that's where a lot of our state and our new construction buyers are coming from, Austin, with Austin agents, because that's where we're getting some of those people that don't know Bastrop. They start out in Austin, then they go to Pflugerville, then they go to Cedar Park, and they kind of make the circuit. If you're talking about locally, most people, if their agent has done a good job, will go with the agent they've used before. I mean, it's still by far a person you know and referral business. That every study says that's still how people pick their realtors. And if it's not that, I do think it's friends. A friend gets in the business, a family member gets in the business. So if they might pick somebody that way. I don't think people are looking on social media and picking an agent based on social media. I think we do social media to try to one-up each other sometimes, more so than our clients actually looking for us. Say, oh, well, that realtor did that, so now I need to do that because I had that idea and I'm going to do that too. So I still love social media. I love being out there to remind people that I'm an agent. But if you were looking for an agent in Bastrop, say you knew you wanted to go to Bastrop, you would probably start with Google if you knew no one, right, Corbin? You'd probably start with Google. Probably see who had what listed, so you might like a listing and pick the agent that way. Or you might like the way somebody looked on the internet, like experience, all of those kind of things. You might go with a big brokerage like mine. I get that sometimes where they're from somewhere completely out of state or somewhere else, so they look for the Remax name and then they peruse the agents on the Remax page for Bastrop. But chances are, if you've got somebody here, it's going to be a referral or somebody, and then you go and check me out. So say you've got a friend that says, I live in Bastrop, I would go with Zia or Frank or somebody else from another. Then that's when you go and look for us on social media, or you go and look and kind of see what you're getting into if that's who you want. I think that's really how people look. I think it's kind of if it's not referral friend based, like that, then it's internet searches backed up by referral type situations.
I think that's accurate. How do you think that people should pick their realtor? Like, what's your advice to them?
I don't think that's a bad way. I think referrals exist for a reason. If it takes a lot for me to put my name on someone else. Meaning, if you did a good job for me and I refer you to somebody else and you do a crummy job for my client, that's a direct reflection of me. And
right. Yeah. People
me.
won't refer someone bad.
But you never, for me to put my clients in someone else's hands, I've got to trust that they're going to take care of them. So I still think referrals are a great way to pick an agent. I don't know that just Googling and going with the first one that comes up on Google is the best. I would think you would want to do a little research and see. And I think you look for someone that you feel like you can relate to, right? So let me give you an example. If I'm your real estate agent, we're going to be working together a lot before you close. There may be multiple phone calls a day. We've got to have a good relationship. You've got to trust me. You've got to know you can get a hold of me. We've got to jive. It's just like when I did my addition to my home. There are so many great builders to choose from, but I had to pick somebody that I knew I could work with on a daily basis and not irritate with my questions or would take, what I mean? You've got to kind of have that relationship, because real estate at the end of the day is about relationships. Somebody's putting their trust in you to help them with one of their biggest financial, if not the biggest financial decision of their life at that time.
Yeah. It's just a lot of conversations. So might as well be talking to someone that you get along with, and good to find that out sooner rather than later if you do or don't. I agree with you on that.
Because I don't think
Zia,
experience, some people don't have experience. They have to get it somewhere. So make sure if you're going with a new agent, they have a broker they can get a hold of. That's the other thing. If you're going with one of the new ones, make sure you know who their broker is so you know they're talking to somebody.
Yeah, that's a good point. Zia, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on today. Thank you so much for coming on.
I'm glad there wasn't really a warrant out for my arrest. I'm really glad.
Talk real quick before we go. So last thing, what happened minutes before we jumped on today for our visit?
I got a call from the Bastrop Sheriff's County Department telling me that I signed for jury duty, but then I didn't show up, and that Judge Dugan, who is a real judge in our community, had issued a warrant for my arrest, and I had to come there to clear it up now and stay on the phone. And they used a lot of real names, and they really got me going, and I left here to go to the sheriff's office, and I was texting Corbin telling him, and he didn't believe me. He thought I was making it up and not wanting to do the podcast.
Yeah, you were nervous. I thought you were nervous to be on the podcast.
No, I mean, I probably will go back and say I shouldn't have said that way, but whatever. I mean, I have a good heart when it comes to real estate and everything else. But anyway, long story short, when they said they needed $15,000, I hung up on them after they threatened me that I was going to be arrested. And I told them at that point, I was like, I'm going to text the judge right now. And they're like, well, he's in court. I'm like, well, we'll just see. And I hung up.
I didn't count on you knowing the guy and sending him a personal text message. Well, I'm glad that it ended up being fake and not real. But yeah, I was telling you before we got on, I saw something in a Facebook neighborhood group that was saying, hey, they're using real names of sheriffs, real people in our community, and we're aware of this, and this is fake, and all that stuff. I can't remember which neighborhood group I saw it in. I tried to find it for you so I could share it. But anyway, happy to hear that it was not real, and that we don't have to bail you out.
I really didn't have time for that. I really don't have time.
I know.
I don't have time to get arrested. I just don't. So. It's not on my priority list. I got a lot of other things to do. I mean, I probably would tell somebody if they came to arrest me, I do not have time for this right now. Can we reschedule?
That is so good. Zia Lowe does not have time to be arrested. Thank you so much, Zia. It was amazing. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Bye.
If we already know each other, thanks for dropping by. If you're a first-time listener, then we'd love to hear what you think. Please follow wherever you're listening and consider leaving a 5-star review so that more awesome people like you can find our content. To learn more about loan options with Corbin, visit MatisseMortgage.com and click free phone consultation. Take care, and we'll see you next time on House Money with Corbin Matisse.